Sit back and listen to this extremely interesting story. So you decided to turn me into a horned one? I asked my fiancée, say Anna, still a little in shock. Quite a bit of shock, actually. This was a life-changing moment for me. Nothing had hinted at what was currently unfolding. Just a few minutes before, we were busy with our usual Sunday breakfast, and I remembered clearly thinking how much I had lucked out with getting Anna to accept my marriage proposal. Sure, she was a bit quirky sometimes, but nothing horrible so far. Now I held my cooling and unnoticed cup of coffee in my right hand while trying in vain to get a grip on what she had just dropped upon me. "Tom, dear, it sounds so unpleasant and cruel when you say it that way," she said, sounding sympathetic. "Chorny is such an unfortunate, degrading word. You won't be like that. You will be a hero, a man who gets a unique opportunity to prove his strength, his confidence, the level of his love and devotion. You are the love of my life, and nothing will ever change that. I wouldn't dream of taking that lovely ring off my finger, and I'm definitely going to marry you just like I planned." That was a lot to digest. No communication was necessary at this point. She had clearly expressed her wishes. The mere talk we just had already changed our life, our relationship. She had challenged me to prove my love. Did I still love her? Did I accept that challenge? Was this even a completely bad thing? Maybe there was some kind of stimulus in it for me as well. Might be worth a try. There had to be excitement for the man in this whole concept, or it wouldn't have happened as often as she said. What was the allure in this? Well, only one way to find out. Right, I came to a conclusion. "I understand what you're proposing. No, demanding." I cautiously began. "May I ask where this sudden change of behavior comes from, Tina?" She began to huff, obviously taking my reaction to mean that I wasn't completely against the whole thing. You see, Tina had been trying it out with Mark for a while. Although he didn't want it at first, he quickly came to his senses, and after a while he really liked it. Mark, indeed, self-proclaimed alpha male Mark. So there really had to be something intriguing about it. Well, assuming she was telling the truth, but it didn't matter too much. I would be experiencing the whole thing up close and personally anyway, it seemed. She was smiling widely now, assuming she had convinced me already with her considerable female charm. Even though I always enjoyed said charm, it seemed I had just seen a totally new side of my loving fiancé. "Mark, seriously? I'd never have guessed," I answered, avoiding any mention of my own feelings. I was still a bit undecided about those. That doesn't make him any less of a man. On the contrary, I think it shows how mature and confident he is, and how much he loves and trusts her. However, it greatly improved their married life. She babbled again, the sheer joy of her perceived success practically pouring out of her, and it was almost contagious. Wow, they're still doing it. No, they stopped when she had their first child. "Anna, this has the potential to alter our relationship permanently. Have you thought this through? You're really sure about this?" "Yeah, kind of." She pretended to think about it for a few seconds. "Yeah, I am," she firmly declared. "This is a serious decision, possibly changing our whole relationship." "No, it will be just a bit of harmless fun for a limited time. Afterwards, we will live our lives as a conventional couple, happily remembering this exciting time of our lives." "May I ask if you have already decided on this, or if you're merely proposing this?" "Tom, I really love you, and I know you're reluctant to try this, but yes, this is decided. I need this experience, and to be honest, I even had a bit of a jump start yesterday. You see, Roberto can be quite convincing." "What, Roberto? Who is Roberto?" "You don't have to worry at all, dear. Yes, he's very handsome, but so are you. He's charming and knows how to have a good time, but he has nothing on you in that way. It's just that this whole situation makes spending time with him so wonderful and unusual. Roberto is very experienced. He's done it for others like Mark and Tina. It helped them a lot," she exclaimed happily. "I bet it did," I dryly stated. She wrinkled her forehead a bit, but chose to ignore my less than enthusiastic reply. "Anyway, we just knew that you'd come around to this. I know how strong and self-assured you are, how much you love me, and how open you usually are for kinky ideas. I might have jumped the gun a bit, but we saw no harm in getting going when the opportunity arose." Wow. This was a lot of news at once. I felt a lot of strong and widely mixed emotions about the whole thing. So what would be the rules? Not the most intelligent question, but the only one I could think of. "Well, Roberto is going to spend time with me, of course." She even giggled a little. "No feelings, just pure, unadulterated sports communication. That's the whole point of this game. I understand. What about me? What is my role in this? Roberto has agreed that I will still be allowed to service you orally, but it is forbidden to be with me from now on. I know it sounds weird, but it's his rules, and he's clearly an expert here. This is obviously a big sacrifice for me since I love spending time with you, but I decided to accept it. Of course, he is going to please me in any way, including unusual ways. Really, you never wanted. Yes, I know, we never tried that. I still don't fancy it, but it seems quite important for him. Wow, I see. I've never understood some men's fascination with unusual communication, so this extra detail wasn't a big deal for me. She knew me well and realized that I would need time to process this new information. She again waited patiently for me to finish, so this will be only for a limited time. She jumped up in pure joy and threw her arms around me, assuming I was on board with this. I knew it, she cried. I just knew it. You are simply the best. Ah, Tom, from now on I'll call you Tommy, not Tom. Okay, it's part of the game. Okay. I never liked the name, but it was part of my role, wasn't it? Will I at least get one last chance? No, Tommy, I'm terribly sorry, but Roberto has forbidden it. The game is already on. I will just have to make sure that the pun fits, she explained, giggling a bit. Sure, I said as she began to pleasure me. Reluctantly, I opened the door a few hours later to find a guy, presumably Roberto, standing there. He offered me his hand, grinning widely. I ignored his hand and just stepped aside. He seemed a bit surprised, but got over it quickly, his arrogant smile returning. At least I felt like I had scored a point, small as it may be. But then I remembered why I was there and what my role was to be. I wasn't there to score points or to win. My job was to lose. I realized that this was way more difficult, and it would take a while for me to get used to it. I thought that the whole point of this was to make me feel humiliated and jealous, while having to watch Anna greet this Roberto guy with a deep, passionate kiss, and it fully lived up to the expectations. Boy, did this hurt. I felt my eyes starting to water while my emotions varied between anger, hurt, humiliation, and, surprisingly, excitement, all in industrial strength. Anna had described Roberto as a handsome and charming man. Well, I could hardly judge his charm at this point, but he seemed mostly arrogant. Maybe Anna liked it this way. What confused me were his looks. I always had problems judging the attractiveness of other men, but this guy seemed surprisingly unremarkable and even unattractive. Come to think about it, he didn't look even a bit Latin. I asked myself if Roberto might be a stage name. He looked like a Walter or Michael, just some normal guy. He was a bit smaller than me, definitely a lot less muscled, and not in nearly as good shape. I was almost disappointed, having expected a big, mean and dominant hunk, and not a smallish accountant type with a receding hairline. But hey, this game was played solely in the minds of the people involved. Physical appearances probably weren't too important. What was happening was essentially between Anna and me. This guy was just a tool. I was still curiously soaking up all these new experiences and insights. I certainly couldn't be described as enjoying this situation, but it was definitely very interesting. And while I was far from being an adrenaline junkie, I felt a lot more alive than I had for quite a while. All of this was as exciting as I had expected it to be, but unfortunately not in a purely positive way. Anna chose this moment to wobble past me on her unaccustomed and obviously recently purchased red high heels with him in tow, leading him towards our bedroom. I had never seen her wearing the like, and to be honest, it looked a bit ridiculous on her. There are women who can wear such shoes and walk in them like they were sneakers. Anna was clearly not one of them. As she passed me, I saw a white tag sticking out of her obviously newly purchased outfit, pointing up along the spine. Anna's uncertain step and sticker gave the whole scene a distinctly amateurish look. If she wanted to achieve the vibe of a femme fatale, she still had a long way to go. She kissed him briefly but strongly and stood in front of him. As I watched her pleasuring him, a new wave of emotions came over me. Humiliation was now mixed with a touch of excitement and other emotions. In a few minutes that felt more like a cheap 70s adult movie, they announced that they were going to the bedroom to start the main event, and that I was invited to watch them. I politely declined, having already had enough of the unpleasant experience for the day. To my surprise, they managed to amplify the general cheers, making the scene even more incredible. Yes, do it, you are so good, and so on. It didn't sound fun, but I realized that this whole thing wasn't just for fun. They did it at least partly for my benefit. We all just played our assigned roles. I had to suffer, which somehow Anna planned to enjoy. I sighed and went into the guest bedroom, which was now officially my room, the land of horns as described by Anna. I wondered if I would find some cheesy sign on the door, "Welcome to Horned Land." I shouldn't have soiled the bed for her lover, she explained. I asked myself what I had let myself into and how long I could put up with it. Although it was all an interesting experience in its own way, and excitement was a certain part of my various feelings, I still doubted that I could endure it for very long. During the following weeks, they never met at his place. They always spent time at our house in my former bedroom. I fully understood that meeting elsewhere would eliminate an important part of this game, my humiliation. So she used to go out with him, always dressed to her best, displaying herself in front of me. I enthusiastically greeted him in front of me, going out to meet our friends and openly discussing that she has a lover with my consent. Returning to our home to rejoice, when they were around I was invited to look at them. Sometimes I did for a few minutes, usually not. After a while the novelty of the experience wore off. I still felt some interesting and conflicting emotions, but they weren't as strong anymore. Anna was always kind and loving and offered to please me several times a day, but only when Roberto was not around. Roberto was always a bit arrogant, but for the most part he ignored me altogether. For a while I accepted her suggestions, but after a while I didn't want them anymore. Surprisingly, this change did not affect Anna at all. Tommy, I was reading a fascinating book and almost didn't notice their show today. Roberto reached his pleasure with a loud grunt. It sounded like a water buffalo in one of those natural channels, while Anna squealed like a little girl. Every day they behaved more and more strangely, apparently trying to keep the game interesting. He'd been demanding the unusual from her for a long time, so I didn't see too many options for them to up the ante and save me the pain. You see, communication with Roberto is very exciting. You probably hear it. My reaction is much stronger than yours when we were still hanging out. Well, you seem to be much louder, I cautiously answered, avoiding any statement about their credibility. Right, she seemed very excited. There clearly was more to come. I expected some new addition to keep their humiliation game interesting and wasn't disappointed. You see, as exciting as it is to be completely with this dominant man, there is one thing that will make it even more exciting. I just looked at her, politely awaiting the news. He calls it retrocommunication. Retrocommunication, you mean like the old days? Here I thought it worked pretty much the same way from the beginning, but I guess there was always something new to learn. No, Tommy, communication without protection. According to Roberto, the possibility of having a child is very emotional for all of us. I can't even describe how excited I am about this. What a thrill. Just imagine this every time he is with me. I can have our first child. I've never been more excited than I was right after I agreed to it, even though I was still on the pills. Our first child, yours and mine, not his, of course. The child will be ours in any case, Tommy, she sincerely stated. I see, I answered in a neutral tone. The second child can be sired by you, of course. At that point, this whole game will have ended anyway, and I will be yours alone again, like I've promised. I see, that's all you have to say. She seemed a bit disappointed by my reaction. Well, of course, I was actually at a loss for the right words. I'm glad that you find such a big satisfaction in this. You bet, Cucky, that still stung a bit. So when are you going to start? When are you going to go off the pill? Oh, that was about 3 weeks ago. Oh wow, so you can have a baby already? It's unlikely, but I might be soon. Isn't that exciting? Well, yes, it was exciting all right, along with several other feelings. I had to admit that I felt the rush of adrenaline that I hadn't felt for the last few weeks as the so-called game grew more and more stale. So in some perverse way, the new turn of events made sense. This game will end with our first child, just remember that. Then you won't be horny again, never again. You'll be a proud man again, my man. I'll only be yours again. We'll be so happy. She gushed from happiness. I see that this makes you happy. She confirmed this by squealing. Just remember, as soon as my belly starts getting really big, Roberto has agreed that I'm yours again forever. Isn't that great? I nodded to confirm that I had understood, smiled, and turned to my book again. Maybe do you a favor to celebrate? Ah, no thanks. Those should be reserved for Roberto. She frowned a bit, but left it at that. A few months later, two things became apparent. Her growing belly and Roberto having left for parts unknown. Anna came into my room dressed to the nines, smiling expectantly. Tadila, Yeah, tada, you have your loving wife back. Well, technically, I know, she interrupted me. We're not yet married, but you're my fiancé. Say, my man always have been, and I'm your woman again. Roberto has left the scene forever. He has, yes, and like I promised, I'm yours again forever. So it's done, you're actually. Yes, I know, it was a silly question to ask while looking at her swollen belly. Pregnant, yes. Isn't that great, honey? We're going to be proud parents. She tried to act overjoyed, but it didn't seem sincere. Actually, she suddenly seemed nervous. I looked into her eyes, I looked over her face and her body, taking my time. Suddenly, I felt like I had just met her. There was a woman standing in front of me. Did I like her? Good question. I didn't know. Did I love her? I remembered that I once did. Now she was pregnant with another man's child, conceived in a deliberate act of betrayal. She wanted to marry me. She expected to marry me. Did she? She looked at me with an unfamiliar, clearly anxious expression. This was a life-changing moment, and we both saw it with crystal clarity. Things had changed, the clock had been reset. All choices had to be made again. Tom, she was at a loss for words, which was unusual. Her insecurity emphasized the new shift of power. Tom, I hope you've never doubted my love for you. This was just a short aberration, an exciting experience before our married life starts. Consider this like marrying a single mum, only in my case. I don't know. Tom, please say something. This leaves you in a quite difficult situation, doesn't it? Leaving me? What? Why, now I'm back to you. From now on, I'll never even look at another man. I've had my experience. It's been a strange adventure for both of us. All that fantasy is safely behind us. Now it's time to move on with our lives and plan the wedding before I start showing too much. We'll be seeing our friends often to show them that I'm your woman again, totally committed. Now she was speaking too loud and too fast. You are pregnant, single, and have a low-paying job. That sounds like a bit of a problem. I was so calm. It wasn't an act, that was what I felt. I had a choice, and I wasn't planning to rush it. I felt that suddenly I had all the aces in my hand. What do you mean I'm not married? We're going to change that soon. You're the love of my life, like I am yours. You have proposed to me, and I've accepted. Yes, my job isn't as well paid as yours, but we had agreed that I'd be a stay-at-home mom anyway. You seem to assume that I still plan to marry you. Her look told me that she had the same doubts, but wanted to whitewash it with her fake cheeriness. What are you talking about? Of course you're going to marry me. She came up to me, clearly wanting a kiss, a hug, or whatever. My palm quickly stopped her. Why should I? I'm not saying I won't, but it's not an easy decision. I'm pondering the pros and cons. I proposed to you once, but you've added a lot of baggage since, emotionally and physically. I pointed at her belly. Fear began to show on her beautiful face as the reality of her situation began to dawn on her. She needed to convince me to continue living the life she had planned, and she needed to find good reasons quickly. She had no plan B. If I refused to marry her, she would have nothing. We both realized what a terrible risk she was taking when she got hit by some guy when she needed me to take care of her. Especially since that woman had somehow recently had several accidents and still didn't want to go back. But she didn't know that. But you agreed to our game that night. Agreed? Not really. You've already cheated on me and publicly disrespected our conversation. You've already decided to do it regardless of how I felt about it. Our relationship was over right then. I told you it could change our relationship forever, but you didn't believe me. I just stayed out of curiosity. It was an interesting opportunity to find out what this strange game was about, even though I wasn't really involved anymore. Maybe I even wanted to see how you would behave after you were so cruel to me. Now, excuse me, I have a date with my girlfriend. Your what? Again, she looked shocked. Not a good evening for her, I suppose. My girlfriend. You really expected me to remain celibate. You opened our relationship, so why shouldn't I benefit as well? Oh no. Then she suddenly perked up as she saw an opportunity. I'll tell her you're horny. I will tell this to every woman you are interested in until you come back to me. Oh, she already knows what you did. She laughed a lot. You could have noticed that I haven't touched you in months. I didn't want to betray her. Oh my God, I never had a clue. So I suppose you saw her while I was with Roberto. Yeah. In the end you spent 4 or 5 nights a week with him and most weekends. You didn't even notice I wasn't in the guest bedroom. It really was rather easy. That much I wasn't even aware. I was on some kind of power trip. Tina and that guy filled my head with these ideas and now it's gone bad. Yeah, probably. I even started to feel a bit sorry for her. Well, just a bit, of course. Tom, any chance? No, no, I don't think so. I had made up my mind, I see. Tell your girl. Friend never to be as foolish as I was. I envy her the chance she has with you. I wish. Never mind. That train has left the station. Right, right. So, you think you're going to marry her? I plan to ask her tonight. I'm quite confident she'll say yes. She has hinted in that direction rather strongly. It turned out I was right about that. Many thanks to the friends for their input, especially Randy and George. Subscribe to our channel so that your second C, Gaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story. Because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.